Hello and welcome to Birth in a Pandemic. I have Lindsay Maish here today with us. Lindsay in the house. Today we're going to be sharing Lindsay's story on how the pandemic has impacted her pregnancy and birth experience. And she's going to share a little bit about her story and then watch to the end because she's going to give you some amazing tips on what has helped her throughout this transition from pregnant mother to holding that baby in her arms. So, welcome, Lindsay. I'm so thankful that you're here today with us. And I just want to say that I'm just amazed on how beautiful you and your husband work together and just your family foundation is so strong in the way that you communicate with each other and work as a team. And I was really blown away to be able to witness that through our time together. And I'm really honored to now call you a friend. So thank you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Hillary. Oh, well, I'm lucky because I've known Aaron. We had been friends for 17 years before we got together. So that might have something to do with it, just maybe.
Right, right. Well, let's kind of get started with, kind of take me back on, how this pandemic impacted your birth or your pregnancy, your birth, and your postpartum experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. let's, let's just be real. Having a baby in a pandemic, we always knew that it was going to be like, don't get too attached, right, to any birth plan or anything like that. And then layer a pandemic on it. And it really, really changes your world. That's for sure. For us, I was 37 weeks pregnant when we received word from the governor that we will be shutting down the nation as a result of a global pandemic. So it was really scary time. I was only just a few weeks out from bringing Emic. So it was almost like, just stay in there. Because if you remember in the beginning, it was like, in 2 weeks, it'll be over with. Uh, so we're like, maybe if he just hangs on, like we'll get through the pandemic and then we'll have the baby. And that would be great. Uh, Obviously, that's not what happened. So, we had been planning up to that point, having a hospital birth and going to our OBGYN appointments every week at that point. And then 37 weeks came and global pandemic, and they said, your partner can't come into the hospital with you. And then they said, and your doula can't come with you, and you're going to be all alone in there. And it was like, I'm sorry, what? I know you're not serious about that, right? Because the thought of having my first child in a hospital all alone with no support is maybe the most terrifying thought that I could have right now. And maybe also the most dramatic thought that I could have had. But all to say that we had to make some really tough choices at that moment. So we started to research. I'm a big researcher, so I wanted to see what our other options were. And there were things like birthing centers, like we could go to Grand Junction and do a birthing center, or we could still stick with the hospital and have maybe a chance that Aaron could be there or not be there. Or we could have a home birth. And I was not ever a person that would have considered a home birth. I am like, science, Western medicine, I'm all in. Like, give me the drugs, do the things to make this easier. And then it was like, I think what would make it easier is if we knew we were safe and secure. So we did research and found that there's really no higher risk of having a baby at home than there would have been for us to have at the hospital. In fact, doing all that research taught us that there was a much higher likelihood that there would be intervention at a hospital of things that could have naturally moved along than as a home birth. So we started interviewing midwives, and there's one in our valley from Vail to Parachute, I believe. So luckily,
that's why I called this video last minute switch because you made that switch.
I mean, I was lucky because because Julianne is amazing. Like I cannot speak highly enough of her. And maybe that's because we just gelled well together. We were a good match. I don't know. It sounds like she catches thousands and thousands of babies. So she must match well with a lot of people. But we were lucky. She was great and she had some help. She had another midwife named Mariah who was working with her. So we had this it was like, okay, so we know what the research says. We know that it's just as safe for us to be at home and that a hospital is about 5 minutes away from my house. It's not that far. So if there were any complications, that was the other thing that we learned by having a home birth is that midwives have very specific thresholds of safety and they have transport and everything ready just in case along the way, like the heart rate gets too low or my respiration changes or whatever. There are lots of different triggers that would cause them to say, okay, this isn't safe anymore and you need to go to the hospital. So that just made us feel really safe and secure, knowing kind of the whole process, which we had never even considered before. So at 38 weeks pregnant, we decided we were having a home birth. And I had always heard about people having their births in hot water, like in a tub or something. So of course I asked the midwives, can I do that? And they're like, because of COVID, you can't. So it was like, they didn't know how it was transmitting, if that was going to be a risk to the baby or to the midwives. So it was just again, there were things all the way along the way that it was just like, okay, well, we're not going to do that.
And there were so many unknowns in April. I mean, it was the first time for, the first of many firsts for both of us, with the classes, with, how things are transmitted with COVID, like what's COVID all about? What's this pandemic? Like there was a lot of new things coming out all the time because we just didn't know enough about it.
Well, and if you remember how it kind of rolled out, it was like, first we were like, is it safe to be around people or not? We don't really know yet. So I remember when you had sent us all an email and said, all right, we've had a birth class together, but I don't know if it's really safe. How does everybody feel in here? And I was like, I don't think it's safe. I don't think we should see each other. But that's because I work in public health and human services. I was like, I don't think it's a good idea. And you were everyone responded so swiftly, right? It was like, okay, so we go to virtual, we figure out a virtual platform and creative ways to try to with the midwives too, it's the same thing. It was like, okay, how do we get creative to still give us the care that we need? There was I would say that such a big shift in the pregnancy that happened for me at the end there was I went from going to OBGYN and seeing doctors and nurses there to having all my care transferred to midwives. And I would say one of the very stark differences was just the type of caregiving. I didn't expect that when I had switched and decided to make that leap to doing a home birth, but it was just very different. I would say that the midwives were just more nurture. They're more like you, they're more nurturing and attuned and listening and spend more time with you. It's not get in 45 minutes, get out. It's really feeling the baby and really spending time with us, talking through the last 2 weeks of the pregnancy. I mean, even though we switched at the very end like that, I was just struck by how different the care was. It was so nice. So the birth, so then I go into labor on April 22nd, which is 1 month after the nation has shut down. And that was Earth Day, by the way, April 22nd. It's funny, Aaron ran out to get newspapers on the day that we thought Emic was going to be coming to us because we thought he was going to come that day because it was 4 a.m. And the newspapers, every newspaper headline was just people dying, global pandemic. He got the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of our local newspapers. He wanted to do that for Emic. So when Emic is older, he can be like, this is the day you were born. It was insane.
What was going on in the world?
we were at home. It was crazy. We couldn't go to a hospital. And that's, I mean, we could have gone, but it was just our choice. So I think so we went into labor at about 4 a.m. on Earth Day. And I didn't end up having emic until about 2 in the afternoon on the following day, on April 23rd. So I was in labor for a long time. And in reflection, I would think that the hospital likely would not have let me be in labor for that long. There's a pretty good chance there would have been an intervention at some point along the way, because that was like 30 some hours of being in pretty active labor. So it's just another kind of like, in retrospect, like the gratitude that I have to have not had to intervene and just have been in it. And
Wow,
I remember thinking, like, in your classes, I remember thinking, like, how am I ever going to manage this pain? And what if it goes longer than like a few hours, But it's like, it sounds cliche, but like that, like the inner, like the way that you go inside and you just kind of like the rest of the world goes away. And you just focus on contractions and the baby coming. Like, I remember you teaching that in your class and just being like, I don't know what that means until I was there. And it was like, Hillary said it would be like this.
Having that space to really allow your birth to unfold without being attached to like a time clock. Like, we got to get this going. We got to go, which, unfortunately, in a lot of hospital settings, they are kind of based on principles of time. So they, want labor to unfold with a specific agenda. And if it's not, then they turn to medicine to kind of get that going, which usually involves interventions. So.
Well, and before I had a baby, I was totally on board with that. I was on board with intervening. I was like, I don't want to be in pain for that long. I don't do well with pain. But it's funny because in retrospect, it's like, was it painful? I don't know that pain is the right word. It's kind of like this weird, like, other universe that you go into and just kind of ride it as you're going. And you almost think like, yeah, it was 36 hours or so, but that wasn't actually that bad. Like, it was okay. And you're right. It's beautiful to let the story unfold. Let Emic's story of how he came into the world unfold instead of having an intervention to quickly bring him in. It's like, it wouldn't have mattered if it was that quick or not.
And to be in that like labor land, but knowing that your body has everything inside of it to really support you and enable you to deal with the intensities of contractions and opening.
That's something you gave me, and also the midwives. They were just like, your body is literally made to do this. Like, that's why we're here on this. I mean, there's other reasons, but this is like pretty primally the reason. And our bodies are equipped, like we're equipped to do this. So you just have to trust that process as you go through it, which was, when you're in it, all you can do is trust it.
Surrender.
Yeah, that's it. Like, that's what it is. So Emmett came to us at 2:00 in the afternoon on April 23rd. Oh my God, that was amazing. I was standing up when I gave birth to him. I know you were like, when I told you that, you were like, warrior, go. Mostly because there was no time for me to get onto my knees at that point. I was like, this is happening right now. This baby is dropping out of me.
It's so funny. It's so funny because it's my claim to fame that I love teaching women how to become birth warriors. So just to hear that you gave birth standing up, I was like, yes. Oh, Lindsay, hell yeah, girl! Like, own that shit.
Well, and there's like so that was in my bedroom, right? Like, in my home, in my bedroom, leaned over, just like right here, like on my bed. Like, so now this one place in my home has this whole different meaning now. You know what I mean? It's like, that's where I gave birth, right there. It's insane.
Special.
So he came out, and he was, of course, in my eyes, he was beautiful. I'm sure in the rest of the world's eyes, he kind of looked weird because they're a little alien-like when they come out. But
no, they're perfect.
He was so cute. He was so sweet. But he came out, his temperature was a little bit low. I was bleeding pretty badly. And when I birthed the placenta, the placenta came out and was about half the size of a normal placenta. So the midwife, so basically what happened is he came out. I was like, I'm like 36 hours later and I'm like, I need to lay down. So I lay down and they put Emic on me and Aaron and I, and then they leave the room and Aaron and I just had Emic and we just held him and he was attached to the placenta. I would say for almost probably about we laid there for like maybe 2 hours before the midwives came back. I later learned that the midwives were like, they're like, okay, the placenta is small, the baby is not, right? That like his temperature's a little low, we're a little worried. So they came back in and they were great. They were just like, here's what's going on. Here's why we're worried. None of this warrants going to the hospital right now. This is just, we're just concerned. You're healthy. The baby's healthy. Everybody's okay. We just want to stick with you for another day or two to make sure that like everybody's safe, that everything, like we know when we would need to take you if we needed to. So that was also kind of like, if I was at a hospital, I don't think the doctor would have been like, I'm going to just stay with you tonight for the night, like, or just like have a relationship with that person that like you already trust so much to just be there and be like, I'm going to like stick with you through this. I know this is a scary moment. It's the first day you have your baby and there's some things that are a little off, not too alarming, but we're going to take care of you. We're going to
stay the night.
She stayed the night. She stayed in the bedroom right next to us. So that was kind of a gift because when Emic woke up for the first time in the middle of the night and I was like, I don't know what to do. Do I rock him? Do I, it's your first kid. So you're like, I don't know. We don't know each other yet, and he had not started to latch. And that was the other reason that the midwives were a little concerned.
But going back, like just having that, 2 hours of that golden time of skin to skin really does speak to the impact that it had on Emic's regulatory system and his lungs and his, brain and his temperature and oxygen levels. Like all of that impacts them in such a positive way to be skin to skin because they get regulated on your body.
Yeah, he co-regulated with me. Well, I actually think he co-regulated better on Aaron than he did on me. So, because I was so tired and spent and like my energy was just so out. So probably after about an hour of holding him, I gave him to Aaron and Aaron didn't have his shirt on, put him on his skin. And I think that was when Emic really started to calm down on Aaron. That's where like you could see his respiration. He was like breathing more and he was, not more, but like better. And like when they first come out, they're so like snotty and like, but he was kind of like just doing it better. So it was just, I feel like that. And if we would have been, I know I keep saying this, like if we would have been in a hospital, because my placenta was so small, his temperature was so low and he wasn't latching right away, they would have taken him and they would have tested him and they would have poked him and pricked him and I wouldn't have been there with him. And just like what it feels like it's a disruption in that initial part where like, God, I think about those moments of just having him on me after giving birth. It was like, oh my, it's heaven. It's like heaven. Oh God, it's so nice. Such a relief and so like sweet and cozy.
Especially after all the work that you both did together to be able to be like, we made it. We're here together. Like,
I mean, he was tired.
Yeah, he was working just as hard as you were, Mama.
Yeah, we actually had the best night of sleep that we ever had that night because I think we were all so tired. It was like, good night, we're out of here. Yeah, that was really sweet. So the midwife stayed with us, just in the room next door to us. And when he woke up in the middle of the night, she was there and she helped us. And then we did the 24-hour appointment the next day. And she came back a week later. I mean, it was really sweet and lovely. And I wouldn't have changed it for the world, even in a global pandemic, who knows?
So how did the postpartum and breastfeeding and all that go for you?
How did it shape up?
Yeah, in lieu of like pandemic.
So he had a hard time latching. If you remember, it was that first day, it was scary because he was already a little bit small. He wasn't a he wasn't like a giant baby, he was 6 pounds. So we had formula on the lock, like ready to go, but we hadn't started giving it to him. I was just, we were just trying to get him to latch. And I just remember calling you, Hillary, and being like, I don't know what to do. It was probably mid-afternoon. I was like, he's still not latching. He hasn't eaten. That means that he hasn't eaten for a day now. Like, what do we do? And you were like, Hillary was like, doula is on the way. She was like, super doula on the way. I'm lucky because you live so close to me that you were like, it was like 5 minutes and you were there. I was like, this is amazing. So great. But I also remember, because that was the first time that you had been in my house since everything had happened. I just remember having this experience of like, you had to, it was before we knew about COVID. So you had to like, I made you like change your clothes when you came in. You had to wash your hands up to your elbows and you had to wear like a mask.
Yeah, gloves.
Yeah, gloves, the whole thing. You had like an armor suit on.
A doula armor suit.
What I remember is being like, how lucky am I that I have this person who is taking this as seriously as we are, and that I can trust this person to come into my home, because at that point I couldn't trust anybody. I mean, it was so early, and like I had my mother telling me that she was quarantining, but she was getting her hair done, and like, you know, I was like, I can't trust you. I don't know what's going on. And you were really honest, and I asked you a lot of honest questions too, like, what's your level of exposure? Who have you been seeing? How often do you go to the grocery store? You know, like these are all these new questions that this age is like experiencing now. But you were really honest, and we felt comfortable because you were honest. And then you also respected all of our boundaries, which were what I had just said. It's like, changed, wear different clothes. Here's my clothes you have to wear. So yeah, that was that. You were like, you came, and it was so funny because I was like, he's not latching. I don't know what to do. And you were like, I'm on my way. And then he latched, and then you showed up, and I was like, I don't know what you did, but it was magic.
You were joking because we're like, yeah, Emmett's trying to show off for you, Hillary, because he just latched perfectly when he hasn't for the last 24 hours. So
exactly. It's been a day. He's like a day old. He's a baby, and he hasn't eaten at all. And then I was like, well, now I know who to call anytime I have any issues. Just call Hillary, and like when she's on her way, they will resolve. They'll just naturally resolve. I think we tried that for a few other things. It didn't work.
Just knowing that you had that support probably helped you relax, which then probably helped Emmett relax, because you're like, I have a rescue. And, you know,
right. Someone who knows what the hell they're doing is coming. And like, I still don't know what to do. And breastfeeding was not easy, right? Like breastfeeding is probably one of the hard, I say this to Erin, it's like, what's the hardest thing you've ever done in your life? I'm like, breastfeed. That was not easy. I also had some issues. I had Raynaud's in my nipples. So I was seeing a lactation consultant and just kind of trying to figure out why the pain existed. The pain was so unbearable. We got through it though. I don't know. I don't really know how. But that support, you know, it's kind of funny because at that point I was like, no more Western medicine, like just doulas and midwives. That's all I need. And then I was like, I need like a Western medicine person to look at this and tell me what the hell is going on. And it was a doctor who diagnosed it. And I was like, oh God, thank God. So it was kind of a new way to invite that appreciation back in and be like, yeah, I do trust Western medicine. It's not like I completely threw it out the window. It still exists for us.
Yeah, and it has more to do with like that safety feeling of building that relationship with someone that you trust and, you know, can take their advice and sort through like what's going to work for you, for your family, and then being able to like, you know, pick what is going to be best for you guys.
I mean, the relationship is huge. And I was I'm the first, because I have worked in mental health and I've worked in human services. I'd be the first to tell you that, but didn't know how important it was until I was doing it and going through it. When we went and met Emmek's pediatrician for the first time, we had a really bad experience, didn't feel supported, maybe just because we didn't have the relationship, I don't know. But whatever it was, I just remember being like, Hillary told me in that birth class that I don't have to like settle if I don't feel comfortable in this, and I can advocate for myself, and I can try, we could try again, or we could just say, you know what, we're going to move on and we're going to get a new pediatrician. The relationship piece is so critical that I just didn't realize it, because that it's the tribe, right? It's us
Right.
who's raising this kid together.
Right.
You were my tribe. The midwives were my tribe. These were my people. This is who were there for me. I trusted them enough that I let them in my home, which was not really what I did for anyone else, not even my own family. So it's a good point. It is.
And I know that you had some tips that you wanted to share with everyone that is joining us today and listening in or watching the replay.
Yeah, I think just that piece about relationship is huge, and that like you can advocate for yourself. You can have that experience where you can switch. Like you can switch at 37 weeks if you want. You can switch the week after the baby's born and say, I don't like this pediatrician, I like somebody else. It's fine. Like there's no judgment on you, or maybe it feels that way, but it's like, that's not your stuff. Your stuff is about you and your family and your baby. So I think that piece is so huge. And then the other like, I guess, tip is one that one of the midwives gave me at 37 weeks, when I was like losing my cool because I didn't know what the heck was going to happen. She said, I know that this is really confusing and really frustrating and must feel so scary for you right now. And I just want you to remember that you have to feel those things, because even though that baby's in your womb, you are teaching him how to experience being afraid, and how to experience regulating and having the feelings, and then finding your way through it. Because if I was to deny it and pretend like everything's fine, I'm just going to meditate and it's going to be okay.
Because those emotions come up for a reason. They usually come up because they're trying to tell us. They're trying to send some kind of a message to ourselves, to our mind, to our body. And so if we're, have that emotional intelligence to allow them to come up and say, what is this trying to teach me here? What is the message here? It's so crucial for not only yourself, then you can teach Emic how to do that in a responsible way too. So that's really beautiful.
Yeah, we've even taken that like clear into now that Emic is like an old man. He's like 9 months old now. When Aaron and I have conflict, or like we are trying to work through something and one of us is sad or one of us is upset, we try to be conscious to do it in front of Emic so that he can watch us. It's okay to get upset and frustrated and maybe even disconnect a little bit. And then we're going to show you how we find our way back in relationship. And we're going to show you that you can still love someone, even if there's conflict. It's okay. It's just like that for me is some legacy work because of my own like family stuff, but so crucial to just be able to show our babies how to like be regulated. And even when you get dysregulated, how do you find your way through it and how do you get back?
Right.
Those are my tips.
Thank you so much. Those are amazing tips for anyone pregnant or parenting their children. Like those are incredible tips. Thank you for sharing that with us, Lindsay. And thank you again for sharing your story. I know that was a vulnerable time for you, and sharing it publicly can be a way of like processing, as well as seeing the little snippets and silver linings and gold threads that line and make you who you are today.
It just makes me realize, like, every time I tell my story, I'm like, you don't have to settle, right? You can switch at any point.
Yeah.
It's okay. You can switch. You can make a different decision. And as long as you're, just thinking about yourself, your health, and your own baby and your life, then you don't have to be married. Well, I mean, I don't mean that. Like, you have to be married to any ideas.
Your decision. Yeah.
And
what works for your family may not work for family B, C, and D. You got to find what works best for your family, and it's different because we're all so unique. Your story is so unique, and I just want to thank you for being on here with me today.
Well, thank you, Hillary, for being you. And I'm just so grateful that I have such a dear friend who I can trust. And that was because you were my doula. So thank you for that. I'm so lucky.
You are welcome. I love what I do. I eat, sleep, and breathe labor, birth, and postpartum. So it's a passion. It's a passion of mine. Here to change the world one family at a time, man. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Lindsay. And look for more at the YouTube channel. And we'll be doing videos shortly. All right. Take care.